Guys, so there's not that much more to know about inclusion tests, to be honest, right? It's either in or it's out. So what you can do with this, the reason it's so significant, is I could take either of these lists, like this one here, and I can turn everything else off. And then I can start, grafting in circles and stuff on a separate system. Okay, so you don't need to do this. I just wanted to show you that you can do this. Right? And then at the same time, if my pattern changes, whatever that pattern's going to be, so too will the definition that it's testing. So it's a pretty powerful system that you can use many different ways. And an interesting thing is once you really master your tree branches of data and grafting things into separate groups and then pairing them up to be tested, you can do a series of panels with entirely different shapes in every single one of them that are kind of dynamic, right? And so that's how you're going to get things that show as a family, but we're not going to get there quite yet, okay? So there is one more component that I think is very important for you to know, and I can just kind of copy most of this to get us started on what we're going to do with that. So do me a favor and copy the rectangle over, or whatever you use, square, rectangle.
Did you turn it off? Why did you turn it off? Yeah.
How did I turn it off? I turned everything off except for the circles.
Oh.
Okay. So the part that I'm concerned with here is just the subdivision of points, because I'm going to do another point-based operation. So I will copy this, pull it down, and I'm just going to replace the curve connection with the other rectangle. So that'll give me that.
So then you replace a curve and open up.
Yeah, the curve. I replaced the curve. I'll give you guys a sec to catch up. Okay, so what we've done here is the same thing we did before, right? We created the point list. We are going to create an attractor point. It's like a magnet that, based off of its distance from other points, will reduce proportionally the circles that we create. Okay, so let me first set up the circles, and then we'll kind of fit in the radius value inside. So I'm going to go to curve and primitive and circle. I'll plug that in here. And they're looking really small, so here's a good chance for you guys to practice your scaling effort. Okay, so I said my rectangle or square is 100 feet. So my radius, I'm going to make it probably, I'll do a slider from like 0 to 10 feet. I'll probably land somewhere around 3 or 4. So, yeah, we do 2.5 feet. 0 to 5.0. No, I did 0 to 5.0 so that I could get a little bit closer. The exercise here isn't critical that you have exactly a tangent circle. I just wanted to scale it up until it's pretty close and then call it a day. Because we're doing a scaling exercise here, so.
You want them like that?
Yeah, get it so that they're about tangent. Okay, so eventually I'm going to replace that, but here's what we're going to have to do, and just pull this off to the side because there are quite a few things we're going to have to put in the interim here, in between. We need to test, it's another testing function, we need to test the distance of each of these points from a reference point. Okay, so we need to create the reference point first. I'm going to go into Rhino and say point, and I'm going to put it somewhere in space there, kind of up to the top right. I'll put it right there. Okay, now I'm going to start with giving you the tool that you need to use, and then we're going to kind of work left and right from that. The tool that you need to use is under Vector, point. And I always forget whether or not it's closest point or closest points, plural. I believe what we want is closest point, singular. This is under vector point. Now what this is going to do, like I said, it finds the description is pretty bad. It says it finds the closest point in a collection. That's not informative. What it's really doing is it's finding the closest point. Actually, I might need closest points. Hang on. That's the output. Closest point, CP index, distance. No, sorry. We want the plural one. Go to vector point, closest points, plural. So it's going to ask you for a point to search from. Then it will ask you for a cloud of points to search. That's multiple points. And then it will ask you for how many of the closest points you want to find. You don't need to worry about that, really. Wait a minute. Now I think we need to go back to the singular one. Yeah, no, sorry. We need to go back to the singular one. Because I forgot. It's phrased like it is a singular function with the last one, but this is the one you actually want to use if you want to find the closest point with multiple points. It's confusing. Sorry. Let's go back to the singular one. Closest point. Point. All right. So we're going to do a point to search from, and then we're going to have a cloud of points to search. So the point to search from is going to be that point right there. So I need a param. I'm going to right-click that, say set one point, and click that point in space. So I'll plug that into P. And then the cloud of points to search is this list of points right here. So what does that give me? It gives me a if I pull a panel in, it gives me obviously the closest point. That's the singular function right there. It just finds whichever one is closest. We're not going to use that. It also gives me the index of that particular closest point if I wanted to use like a point list and get it from that list of items. But the most important one here, all the way down the bottom, is distance. Oh, darn it. Hang on. Point to search from. Did I just do this backwards? There we go. Sorry, I just did it backwards. That's why it's confusing. It's been a while, guys, and I'm tired. But, so let me just recap this and keep this one in your mind specifically, right? The singular version of closest point is the one you want, and the reason I got it all screwed up is because I gave it the point to search from. I gave it the singular point. What I really wanted to do is search from all of my points to the singular point. And that's how you're going to get your whole list of distances, which is this right here. So who would venture to guess why this is important? How can I use this to scale circles?
Is it to like find like the tendency or like not the tendency but the midpoint?
No, because we already have the midpoint. That's where we set the circles to be. How can we use the distance from this point to that point and the distance from this point to that point to scale it differently? Okay, so you're going to need to think about the information a little bit differently here. This is our first time where we're actually using a magnitude of distance as a proportional value for a scaling factor. So it's kind of weird. Like you're using, clearly it's just a number, right? Our first number is 105. But if I take that 105 and I squash the maximum number down to, say, 1, and then 105 in this list is my highest number, and 75 is my lowest number at, say, a quarter, right, 0.25, then this index 0 theoretically would be my largest, and it would be scaled to 100%. And the 75 ones would scale all the way down to 0.25, or 25% of its original size, all proportionally based off of its distance from that point. You guys understand conceptually? Sort of, kind of? Yeah, all right. Well, yeah. Let's actually apply it. So we're going to need to change the information, right? I said that we need to change the maximum value to be a 1.0 or 100% of, well, actually, it would be a 2.7. 100% for us would be 2.7. We'll talk about that in a second, but I'm going to need that. So when I say maximum, what bell does that ring for you in your mind, right? Like I'm delimiting something with a boundary. What does that make you think of? Nothing? You guys are just as tired as I am.
Yeah.
So when you think of boundaries or delimiting or reducing, think domain. Okay, so I'm going to get rid of that panel. Let's go back up into Math, Domain, and let's look at how we can reduce that value. It's a little misleading, but the idea of basically reducing those numbers, we can do it through Remap Numbers. Okay, so Remap Numbers is going to allow us to take and look at the input values to see what it's looking for. It's going to take the values to remap. That's our original list, right? 100 and 75 and everything in between. And then it's going to take a source domain. So we need to find what is, in that whole list of 361 items, what is 360? What is the lowest value and what's the highest value of the existing list? Then it's going to ask us to build a target domain. So I'm going to take that whole giant list of values over 100, and I'm going to reassign it and squash it down to be a certain new domain. That's what Remap Numbers does. You guys understand that conceptually? I'm taking this one really slow so you kind of get it. But anyway, let's build it, and then I think you'll get it. So here with ClosestPoint, obviously, the values we want to remap are the distances, right? Those are the numbers we're concerned with. So I take that and I plug it into V. The source domain, right now, we just have just a straight list of numbers. So we need to find out and investigate and analyze what is the highest number, what is the lowest number. We can do that in the domain menu, and it's going to be under bounds. See how the icon says min-max? It'll take a list of numbers and it'll give you a domain output that just says, okay, so our smallest number is 3.26. That's one of these four right there. Probably that one. And then the largest value is 105. That's the bottom left corner. Okay? So we plug that into our source domain. And then we need to give it a target domain. So I'm going to go back up into domain, and I'm going to construct a new domain. And this one I'm going to do with params. And so what I want to do is set what is the minimum radius that I want any of my circles to possibly reach. Well, no, because my largest radius is going to be 2.7. I know that because I investigated with a slider and I found what I want to be my largest. In fact, let's make a slider rather than a panel. So I'm going to say slider from 0 to 5.0. Yours might be different. You need to pay attention to what your scale is. I'll plug that into domain start, and I'll bump it up to, say, like a 0.5. Then I'm going to take this radius, and I'm going to make that my domain end. That's the maximum value it could possibly be. And then I'll plug this into T. And then, finally, I can take the remapped list of numbers and plug it into R for circles. And this is what you get. Yeah, well, I'll come around and troubleshoot, but let me recap. You know, I explained it really slow, and I'll recap just as slow, but this was the closest point, right here. This was the closest circle to the point, and it got remapped to my smallest radius. Then you go all the way out here to this one. That is the farthest one from that point, and that got remapped to my largest radius using remap numbers, right? So it took the distances and it squashed the distance down into a proportional percentage value or magnitude value for the radius of the circle.
So you move that point around, that one does the same thing, right?
Yeah, if I move this point around, it's fully live. It'll just recalculate.
Can you do the other way around? The closest, the largest?
Yeah, I think so. You would just... Actually, will it invert the numbers? I don't know if... Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, so you could just invert the numbers and do the same thing.
That is so cool.
Okay? So, the reason I bring this up is because your topographic aperture project that's coming up is going to utilize elements like this in order to kind of see through, not really a landscape. I call it topographic because it's not going to be two-dimensional. But the idea is that you're able to take planes of information and patterns and see objects and features that are underneath using, you know, either a disintegrative, this would be a disintegrative aperture, or a triangulated aperture or subtractive aperture. So we're going to do a whole bunch of stuff with layering these kinds of systems tomorrow and the beginning of next week.
Tomorrow?
Or, I mean, Thursday, sorry. Yes?
How do you grab the point and move it around?
I have gumball on, so I just yank it with the gumball.
Is it on the floor? No, I don't know where it went.
You might have turned it off. Turn the layer off.
You could just click the point.
Okay, so I'm going to come around and troubleshoot. What questions do you have generally?
Can't troubleshoot.
Okay.
Wait, it's just an X.